Yo, what up, Night Nation? Want to do a video of my reaction to last night's loss to Louisville. Was pretty upset last night, so I didn't even post it all. Was kind of emotional. Didn't want to say anything I didn't mean, or just not have the proper reaction. So waited till today to gather my thoughts. First of all, some of the issues that kind of we saw come up in last week's game against SC State, which obviously didn't matter because it was a lower tier team. They really mattered this week against a real team, a Power 5 team, an ACC team in Louisville. Also, a lot of the issues from last season's team completely reared their ugly heads. Let's just start right off the bat, the offense. Some of the offensive play calling. Look, I'm not a coach, but I'll tell you, I just saw the offensive play calling wasn't working. There was a lot of the same rushes with Bowser that weren't working. There was a lot of just of the same screens that don't really gain much yard, and the offensive play calling was not creative. There was barely any shots downfield. There was no slants, not a lot of middle of the field type of plays. That's one thing. Quarterback, John Rice, some of the issues we kind of saw last week, even though he had a great stat line, they appeared. He didn't make his progressions, his reads. He missed some wide open receivers, had some bad throws, wasn't really being that effective with his legs, especially in the second half, and just didn't seem to be able to, hit his receivers. Granted, there were some bad drops, which also actually happened last week and last year. There's some bad drops by, I think Kamara Gamble had a couple drops. I think O'Keefe had a bad one in the first half. And just in general, the offense was out of sync. There was, after the last Bowser touchdown, after basically our last point, our second touchdown, we didn't score at all in the second half. That's the first time that's happened since 2016. There was 10 straight possessions without a score. There was 6 straight possessions of a punt, so not even close to, obviously we had the missed field goal, but there were 6 straight possessions with a punt spanning into the second half. So the offense just wasn't good. 14 points is absolutely horrific with the amount of talent that is on this offense. Special teams. Once again, Obarski proved himself to be unreliable. He's now missed another field goal after missing his only lone field goal attempt in week 1. He missed this one, under 40-yard field goal. He's not reliable. He's not the answer kicker. I don't want to be rude or mean, but he's clearly not, good enough to be the kicker. He's just not reliable. That's 3 extra points we could have had when we needed some sort of scoring momentum to happen. So there was that, and then there was just a couple, muffed punts. Just special teams right now seems to be a mess. Offense, like I said, as a whole, just was not in sync. Plumlee, the fact that we all know that he's an athlete, and he uses his legs, wasn't that effective on the ground. I mean, he had a couple good get escape and get out of trouble plays, and that goes. Now let's go into the offensive line. That's something we saw last week that we were all concerned with. Didn't really matter because it was a 56-10 win, but the offensive line was just absolutely abysmal. It kind of leans to the reason why maybe Gus did choose JRP, even if Keene is the better passer, because Keene's not mobile, and this offensive line is not giving JRP a lot of time to throw. I don't know if he did have a lot of time, if he would be making those throws, but the offensive line got bullied. They just were not good. Maybe it's because there's 2 new pieces on the left-hand side with Swoboda and Grable, but this is an experienced line with all seniors and upperclassmen. It should not be this bad as it is. So that's the offense. That's the special teams. The defense looked good. Look, they were probably gassed. They did what they needed to do. They got UCF in position to win. They made big stops, especially in the fourth quarter. UCF stopped Louisville with 5 minutes to go, and then with under 2 minutes to go, where the offense had to take over and win the game. So the defense, I give them credit. They did what they had to do. Clearly, that is going to be the strength of this team this year. The defense is pretty damn good. I don't think you could ask them to do a better job, given the fact that there's all those punts. They're getting barely any rest. They did their job 100%. Another issue, the penalties. 11 penalties for over 110 yards. Just absolutely killer. Where's the discipline? I don't know if it's because there's a lot of new pieces on the team or it's just a matter of just not being disciplined. I'm not 100% sure there, but that was absolutely killer there as well. So overall, it was just a bad game. Some of these issues seem to be repeating and systemic, like special teams. That was last year. That was week 1. That was week 2. Offensive line play. That was last week. That was this week. The offense, I don't know if that is quite systemic yet. I don't know. It could be just, the cohesion, the chemistry is not there yet. But either way, the offense does not look good. 14 points with the amount of talent, personally think is unacceptable. Overall, I think the coaching was not great this week. Sorry. I just think Coach Malzahn got outcoached, quite frankly. This is a Louisville team that put up 7 points last week and gave up 31. I just think the play calling was predictable. It didn't really utilize some of the athletes that we have, some of the receivers that we have. So there was that. Now, let's talk about some of the positives outside of the defense, or reasons for optimism, I should say. First of all, Ryan O'Keefe got injured in the first half and didn't play at all in the second half. So that was a factor. We didn't have our primary weapon, our primary receiving weapon in the game for the second half when we really could have used him. Granted, he only got 4 touches in that first half. He needs to be utilized more. We saw last year what he could do when he gets the ball in his hands. Second of all, Kobe Hudson was not in this game. He did not play in this game. So we were basically down our top 2 receivers for most of the game, or at least for one half, and then had one of them, and for the second half had neither of them, obviously. So we were down quite a few weapons. Secondly, I do think that having 2 touchdowns called back was a game changer for UCF. One of the ones that was called back would have put UCF up 21-7 heading to the second half with the ball back in the second half. That was a momentum killer. Then obviously we had a second touchdown called back. How often do you see 2 touchdowns called back in one game? It's not like it's impossible, but it's fairly rare. So I do think that is something that we can hang our hat on, is that, that's something that's not really like a repeatable thing. Like, Obarski, that's not going to improve. Having 2 touchdowns called back is likely not going to happen again. I do firmly believe if those 2 touchdowns didn't get called back, we would have won that game. Even if one of them didn't get called back, we would have technically won the game 21-20. If we would have hit a field goal and one of them not called back, we would have won by almost double digits. So I do think that is a positive takeaway, that we did score touchdowns. I do think one of the ones that called back was an extremely debatable call. I don't ever blame the referees, but they made some very questionable calls. Even at the end, when we got intercepted there, it looked like it could have been a touchdown, but they called it an interception. So there was really 3 potential additional touchdowns where that would have been 35 points instead of 14. Obviously, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And that didn't happen, but I don't think that's something that's going to continue happening. At least we know we got the ball in our playmakers' hands. They made a play. They got into the end zone. So the offense, in my mind, is better than the 14 points that was displayed yesterday. Another thing sorry to go back to the negatives, though, I do feel that Isaiah Bowser has seemed to regress a little bit. That's a second straight game where he didn't look great. Yes, he has 4 touchdowns on the season, but they're all little short runs, and he's a big guy. He's going to, run it through. But as far as just he lost weight, and I don't think he really added any additional speed because of it. He has not looked like he did last year. He has not been as effective as he was last year. That being said, Johnny Richardson needs more than 5 touches a game. Look what he did. I mean, he got 5 carries for, I think it was 51 yards. I mean, he's averaging close to 10 yards a carry. He needs to get the ball more. He was one of the ones that had the touchdowns called back. He's absolutely dynamic with the ball in his hands, and he needs to get the ball more often, maybe even more than Bowser, or just as much. But he is an absolutely dynamic. Look, there was a lot of negatives, but I do think the positive, the defense played lights out. They're really good. They're going to help us a lot this year. We do have some great playmakers like Johnny Richardson. We are likely not going to get 2 touchdowns called back again. Um, we can see the talent is discernible. You can see the talent on the field. That's not an issue. I just don't think we've collectively come together as a team yet. Partly probably is that JRP hasn't played quarterback in nearly 2 years, and this is his second game back. There's a ton of new starters on offense between the two new offensive linemen, between Kobe Hudson, between Javon Baker, between Kamora Gamble. There's a lot of new pieces that are starting on this team that maybe they still need to come together and gain that chemistry. Chemistry doesn't happen overnight. Especially with a new quarterback, new offensive line pieces, all these new skill players. This is not there. While there is returning pieces from last year, a lot of these guys have not played together in a real game, and they haven't had a chance to mesh yet. So do I think this is systemic and the season's over? No, I don't. But I am concerned. I do not see special teams getting better. Obarski is a senior. He's not all of a sudden just going to start nailing field goals. The offensive line, I don't know. Can they improve? Sure, they can improve, but I don't know. They seem pretty bad, and they weren't great last year. So that's going to be an issue. I think the special teams and the offensive line is going to be an issue all season. However, I do believe the play calling can get better. I do believe the skill position players can start to gain chemistry and get better together. I do believe JRP can get more comfortable and be smoother with the ball and, just play better overall. I do believe that the offense can score more points, can make bigger plays, can get better as the season progresses. And the defense, I think, will only continue to get more and more lights out and help us just win games when it's close. So I think, I don't want to overreact. I am concerned about this season. I am concerned that how are we going to beat Cincinnati? How are we going to beat SMU? How are we going to beat the better teams on our schedule? Fortunately, we have some time. Fortunately, we do play FAU, who's a fairly easy matchup. I think we play a bad Georgia Tech team, and Georgia Tech's at home. Then we go into SMU, so that's going to be a tough kind of game right off the bat. We have 2 games to, I think, improve, get better before we start playing these tougher teams. We'll see how we look next week against FAU. Maybe this starts to improve. Maybe Gus looks at the tape and really,